Good evening, everyone. My name is Abhishek Jain, and today I'm pleased to invite you all to KYE or Know Your Exam series on how to crack the AOR exam or the Advocate on Record exam. This session will be focused on cracking the first paper, which is Practice and Procedure of the Supreme Court. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Shriya Meni, an awardee of the prestigious Salve Scholarship in 2014, who graduated from GNLU in 2013. She secured her BCL from the University of Oxford in 2015 and is currently working as an advocate on record at the Supreme Court of India. She is also a visiting faculty at Ragnul Patiala and an adjunct faculty at Lloyd Law College, Noida. In this session, she will be speaking in detail on how to prepare and crack the first paper on the AOR exam. I would now like to hand it over to ma'am to begin this session.
Thank you so much. I think the team's done a fantastic job with putting this together because we don't have such sessions streaming on YouTube. So first of all, kudos to you for putting this together. Yes, I think this is the must these days because I think this is the first time after COVID that they've notified AOR examinations. So it's absolutely wonderful that we're talking and interacting about how to crack the AOR examination. The first paper for the AOR exam, and it's a series of 4 papers. The first one is Supreme Court Practice and Procedure. And this is perhaps the most crucial, the most important paper by far because it's fundamentally the most important paper to start with. On the basis of this paper rests the other paper's performance. And there's a reason why I say that. Because if you have this paper prepared to the T, you're actually going to find it much easier to go through drafting, to go through professional ethics paper. So I think the subsequent papers will follow through very organically and easily should this paper be prepared. So I think this is one of the most important papers to deal with. Now, Supreme Court Practice and Procedure essentially deals with the jurisdictional types. So there are essentially 7 to 8 types of jurisdictions the Supreme Court of India exercises. And this is the most bulky paper, so to say. This is the examination paper where those 3 hours, it's a 100 marks paper, those 3 hours are going to be of absolute use to you from the first till the last minute. And I literally mean this. You're going to experience this when you write the examination. So I think the first and the most important tip for cracking the AOR exams in general is that you cannot go into the examinations without study. Okay, they are not papers which you can study last minute from a law school point of view and appear. They are very, very detailed, post 5 years of practice as an advocate that you're entitled to sit for this exam. So it's an extremely practical, come theoretical paper. It's a mix. It's a beautiful intermix of both practice and theory. So I think one of the most important things is that it's a memory-based exam, yet it's conceptual. So that's the second tip to understand, that you just not only have to study, but you also have to conceptualize the different facets of the jurisdictional types. So you need limitation for a jurisdiction. What's the court fee to file under a particular jurisdiction? But I think the most important thing is you have to conceptualize these aspects, that when do you file these jurisdictional petitions? So let me give you an example. For instance, if you're looking at the appellate jurisdiction, you're looking at civil criminal appeals, or you're looking at statutory commercial appeals, or you're looking at a special leave to appeal jurisdiction under Article 136 of the Indian Constitution. So you not only have to know these jurisdictions as to how they're enshrined in the Constitution, but you also need to know practically from an advocate on record perspective, how are these petitions filed in the Supreme Court of India? So the tip number 3 that I can give is that essentially an advocate on record is an advocate. It's a special type of advocate who's entitled to file a vakalatnama or a power of attorney on behalf of a client before the Supreme Court of India, which is not a privilege other advocates enjoy. So this is why it becomes very crucial that you study what we call the Supreme Court Rules of Practice and Procedure 2013. This is the Bible, so to say. So it's not any other book. It's the bare act, literally. It's actually the statute, the act, which is the rules which have been notified because of Article 145 of the Constitution. We have something called the Supreme Court Rules of Practice and Procedure 2013. It was initially there in 1996. They were amended, and now we have the new version. So be very careful when you're collating or collecting material for the AOR examination for Supreme Court Practice and Procedure. please don't purchase old material. Don't purchase material with 1996 rules, because then you're going to have a folly, because the rule numbers and the order numbers are going to change. So it's going to be very, very difficult for you. So be very, very cautious. Okay. Very important tip. When you're collecting AOR examination material from your seniors, you're asking the Xerox guy, please be very wary of this fact. This is the 2013 rule notification. The next tip which I can give you is that the most important and the most easiest way to study the rules is this. Go to the registry handbook, which is freely available on the online website of the Supreme Court of India. There's a registry handbook of the year 2017, which is absolutely useful. And it's a topical representation of the rules. So I'd say start with that. The easiest and the best way to crack the AOR examination is go back today, download the Supreme Court Registry Handbook of 2017, freely available. If you just Google it, it'll take you directly, route you through the first search hit. The first Boolean hit goes to the Supreme Court of India website. Just go and download that. It's a topical representation, and do a control F for any of the jurisdictional types. So if you're looking for an original jurisdiction or a writ jurisdiction or a review jurisdiction, just do a control F for review, and the registry handbook will give you all the relevant rules for the review that's enshrined in the articles of the Constitution and the rules thereafter. So you'll actually have a very bird-eye topical view, which is extremely useful for study of Supreme Court practice and procedure. So that's the fifth tip. The sixth tip is that there is something called the AOR examination lectures. Some of them are freely available online, and every year prior to the exam, we have these lectures which are essentially taken by the examiners of the year. So if you have a particular senior advocate, because these papers are checked by senior advocates, these papers are made by senior advocates, very much practicing in the Supreme Court corridors. So I would suggest, and the name of the examiners are actually published much earlier, prior to the examination dates. So I would suggest go and definitely attend these examination lectures or examiners lectures. Extremely useful. They're convened every year, say about 2 to 3 weeks prior to the examination dates, within the Supreme Court chambers. So you have a courtroom which is post 4 o'clock converted into a classroom. And these are very useful tips, because the teacher or the examiner will give out his cherry-picked favorite questions, and you might just be lucky to see 3 to 4 questions flash in the exam straight out of the examiner's lectures. So this is an extremely useful tip to follow. Now, specifically focusing on Supreme Court practice and procedure, my 7th tip would be that there is a book by Professor Venkat Ramani, excellent book, which is titled by the same name of the paper itself, Supreme Court Practice and Procedure. I would say definitely grab this book. It's an extremely useful read. Please do not go for any other authors who have abridged versions. I would say keep the registry handbook, keep the Bare Act of the Supreme Court rules, the articles of the Constitution of India, and just this book. And it's an excellent read, crisp, focus on topics which are essential, which are necessary. I'll give you some off the cuff. For instance, reviews, curatives, special leave petitions. These are jurisdictional types which are going to form at least 30 to 40 marks of a bulk paper of 100 as far as Supreme Court practice and procedure is confirmed. So I think this is very important to keep in mind, that you can essentially do all of these jurisdictions from this handbook itself. Okay. Very important thing also to remember, the 8th or the 9th tip, I'm forgetting the number, is this, that you have questions which are ranging from 2 to 20 markers in the Supreme Court practice and procedure exam. So this is one exam where you have to make your own notes. So another very interesting tip is that you go through the earlier examination papers, and yes, examination questions are often repeated in the Supreme Court practice and procedure exam. So please go to the Supreme Court website, just look at the AOR exam papers, last 5 years papers. The patterns just changed 2 years ago. So look at the earlier papers, at least for reference for Supreme Court practice and procedure. Look at the favorite examiner questions. For instance, I can give you like special leave petitions, doctrine of mergers. There will be questions on these favorite contempt powers. You are bound to find these particular topics in the Supreme Court procedure paper. Okay. So study these questions first. Powers of a chamber judge, powers of a registrar, in contrast with the judicial powers of a sitting justice? So all of these are questions which are favorites. The last but not the least tip for Supreme Court practice and procedure is, please go to the Supreme Court corridors and please shadow an AOR. Do not skip your internship, because some of the questions, and about 50% or 45% of the questions, are extremely practical. These are questions which are completely practice based. So you wouldn't know how to move a circulation. You wouldn't know how to seek a written adjournment, because that's not written in Venkatramani sir's book. That's something you have to experience when you shadow an AOR. So don't miss your training under an AOR. It's crucial to passing the examination. I'm going to end with this tip. And remember this tip for the Supreme Court practice and procedure examination. It's a very bulky exam. It's 3 hours. So you have to pen down as much as you know, all that you know about a particular topic, because it's completely memory based. You have to go very fast and pen down most of the aspects so that you can cover up the exam within those 3 hours. All that you possibly know about a topic, pen it down. It's a subjective paper, 3 hours, and it's extremely bulky. But Venkatramani sir's book is going to give you enough material to go through Supreme Court practice and procedure content. So these were a few tips that I thought I could give you. And this was my take of what all helped me go through the Supreme Court practice and procedure exam, which was the first one, the toughest one. And it's actually good that it gets out of the way the first. So all the best for your examinations, and please study hard. And to crack the AOR exam, please tackle the course content for this paper first. Do not jump to the...
Thank you so much for that very detailed session, ma'am. I think that those tips were very, very useful, and they'll be very useful for someone who's actually just starting off with their preparation of the exam. We look forward to hosting you for sessions on cracking the next papers. And thanks a lot for joining in today, ma'am.
Thank you.